shortly. We've got a number of guests, and I will have them participate as we go along. We've got a relatively long agenda, but I do want to take our time and try to do things and make sure we accomplish things as we go. If you can, I'm not a professional at this Zoom meetings and running it, but if you can, there is in your right-hand corner, if you're in participants, there's a raise your hand and a mute. So if you can, when you want to speak, raise your hand. I'll try to catch you and schedule them as they come up. As Joe knows, that's not the easiest thing to do in the world, but we're doing the best we can under these circumstances. So first item on the agenda, if we can, Councilor McGivern, we'll take up item 1.
So moved.
All in favor? All right.
Aye.
Introduced by myself, Councilor Murphy, ordered that the Director of the Health Department, a representative from the Police Department, Director of Veteran Services, and other interested parties appear before the Public Safety Committee to discuss the problems associated with tented camps throughout the city. Evidence points to health hazards, including significant needles around these sites, as well as trash and other materials. What can the city legally do to clear these camps? And have we found any effective ways to provide options to encourage those in need to various service options such as housing, drug addiction, counseling services, and veteran services? So I've had a few constituents bring concerns up to me. One under the 391 bridge below Main Street, one behind the dike at Springdale Park, and then concerns about some of the things going on in the parks, one of them being McNulty Park over by Stop and Shop in the Highlands. So I've done a little walking, and I did a couple of tours, and there was all of the kind of things that I talked about were there. So, and I want to start off by saying my goal is not to harass those that are homeless, but is try to provide an incentive to try to get them from being in that situation to provide services that make their lives better while also making the community safer and better for others. So I want to emphasize that. I also want to, I just got some statistics from Quincy, Mass, about their homeless shelter, and I know the mayor in his letter to us, I think about a week to 10 days ago, talked about consideration of a homeless shelter. I don't know how far that's gotten, and I don't know, Sean, if you have any other information on that. But in Quincy in 2019, they had 929 individuals that took advantage of a homeless shelter. And they also categorized some of the issues, and I was kind of surprised. There were 229 of that 929 were survivors of domestic violence. 127 were veterans, and 142 were elders who had no longer been able to stay in their homes. And the other interesting fact on that for the elders was that number grew by 77% over the last 5 years. So with those thoughts in mind, I'd like to throw it open for discussion. And how do we make progress? How do we try to clean up things and provide safety? I mean, I had concerns. I know there were about 20 needles found just below the dike at Springdale. I mean, I know I got kids running up and down dikes every now and then. So those are concerns. So I want to see if we can address that and also address as much as we can, how do we make the situation better? So anyone that would like to just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Jesus, and then the chief.
All right. I mean, I'll be very straightforward with some of the challenges that we're having and why people are migrating into Holyoke as far as homelessness is concerned. Obviously, I deal with the veteran community. I'm on a bunch of different committees that are geared towards ending veteran homelessness. I'm on a racial equity committee for homelessness. And the one thing that attracts people to Holyoke is their ability to panhandle. It is a mechanism that allows them to raise the funds they need to support whatever habit that they may have or any needs that they may have in their lives. As far as housing folks that are homeless is concerned, there is tons and tons and tons of work being done through the Continuum of Care, the Hampden County Continuum of Care, and the Hampshire County Continuum of Care with different housing programs. And when you look at housing, I know that the city's been discussing maybe a temporary shelter. The the whole idea with shelters is that those things are supposed to be temporary. They're not the solution to the problem. Permanent supportive housing is a solution, or permanent housing is a solution. So you can't sit there and look for just simply a place to put someone because now they're homeless. You need a whole system that's going to take them from emergency housing to permanent housing. It is the whole system that needs to be in place for it to work. Otherwise, all you're doing is kicking the can down the road. Holyoke, I'm telling you now, it's very panhandler friendly. We see people coming in from other towns to panhandle here. Obviously, I get the phone calls when veterans are homeless and they put their home, the veteran status on their cardboard signs. And a lot of them, and I hate to say it, have every opportunity in the world to be housed. Between the Chapter 115 program that we administer through the city, we can temporarily house them. And right now I have 15 guys that are permanently housed, temporarily housed for a long-term period.
Was that 15 or 50?
15, 1-5.
1-5, okay.
Up at the Motel 6 through another program that's administered through Soldier On. They got some COVID funds for emergency housing of veterans. So what ends up happening is if Soldier On sees that they have veterans they need to house quickly, they'll put them into this shelter, or this is the shelter. This is it's going to be the motel. They'll pay for however long they can to keep the veteran there. But once that money runs out, they're going to run right out to the street and start panhandling again, or coming to my office, which they do now, to apply for Chapter 115. And a lot of these folks they're not organic to the city of Holyoke. And I'm there to help everyone. But what's happening is now Holyoke taxpayers are paying for the housing of folks from New York, from New Jersey, Vermont, any way where they can migrate into the program and then be put up and then take advantage of the local programs that are there to help them. As far as veterans are concerned, zero. There is zero reason for any of them to be homeless. Zero. We have temporary solutions, we have transitional solutions, and we have permanent housing solutions. The ones that are out there that I ran into recently usually have multiple diagnoses and have challenges dealing with that. And that's a whole different situation to deal with. So from my point of view, DHCD has a lot of programs for families. Compañeras is local. That's a women's shelter for battered women. There's Wayfinders that has programs to help people get rehoused. Right now, the eviction moratorium is on, so no one's going to get evicted anytime soon if any of their housing needs can't be paid for because of loss of work because of COVID. There's all sorts of programs that are out there to help people from becoming homeless. The hard part is figuring out why they are homeless and why they continue to be homeless, because there's a lot of effort and a lot of money being thrown at keeping people off the street.
Okay. Thank you, Jesus. Chief Ebo?
Almost forgot to unmute. If I can just make a slight motion or ask if we can take up agenda items 1, 4, and 8. It's the same conversation. It's the same answers. I think it's the first one is talking about tent cities. The second one is about the cahoots. I can address that in the same conversation. And then the third one is talking about sex trafficking, homeless people, and drug addiction. They're really the same thing if you want to take them up together.
We can certainly do that. We'll, as far as taking them up officially together, we probably will do them as they come up. But if you want to talk about that, and I can certainly, the other aspect, I've invited the mayor, and I think he might be coming to some of the later issues. So,
okay, well, it's going to all blend together. I'll just tell you, as far as what we're doing on our end here, we have I have 6 officers assigned, different assignments other than law enforcement. Are you guys hearing feedback, or is that just my laptop? Okay,
no, we're good, I think.
Maybe I'm too loud, but we have 6 officers assigned to different things. We 94C, homeless referrals, things like that. Everything that that Cahoots program talks about, we're doing right now. In the past year or so, we've made 634 referral to services. To dovetail what Jesus was saying, when 50% of those referrals were out of people who do not live in Holyoke. So he's 100% correct there.
What was that percentage?
50% of the
Wow.
634, like half of them are from out of town, referring to detox and other programs and getting them into beds and following up and making phone calls. We do all that. We have crisis intervention team full-time that goes out with BHN. I have 3 full-time sheriffs. We partnered with Sheriff Coach. He's been a fantastic partner. He gave us, we have 3 full-time sheriffs in the city right now that work with our grant officers that go out and do everything that Cahoots talks about, as you'll know. I have an elderly affairs officer. I have a code enforcement officer who works with Sean and the Board of Health. And I have a community policing officer who targets just Churchill and South Holyoke. They go out daily. They do outreach to everybody that's intense, offer services. I think we're finding the same thing with the veterans, as far as if they're not veterans or they are and they're drug addicted or have all kinds of co-issues. They just, a lot of times they just turn services down or they're not ready. And, you know, it just, but we're out there, we're working hard. My guys are doing a great job. I think we've been on 80 calls just for crisis intervention since August 1st. I kind of did a little homework there. And so we're out there, we're busy. The only difference between what we do with ourselves and every other city agency that works in the Cahoots program, the difference is the Cahoots program is paid for in a line item budget by the city council to $798,000. So we're doing everything on grants. So that's kind of what I have now. That kind of fits for the same thing with all those agenda items I talked about.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And do you know, again, this is going back to if let's say you go to a place and I'll use under 391, which was behind near where Hayes and Paper is, and I know there was a camp there, and I know I talked to Sean about it as well. So, I mean, you go there, and let's say there's 4 or 5 tents there, and you know that there's needles and other things there that are potentially dangerous, obviously. I mean, do we have any legal authority to remove that camp or no?
Yes. Well, like I said, we partner. We the last thing we want to do is make arrests. We want to help these people.
Agreed.
We want them to help themselves, which is the most important piece of the puzzle. So yes, we work closely with the Board of Health, fire department, everybody, sheriff's department. We all work together. We try to get them resources, get them out of there. If there's a mess with needles or anything like that, which it's almost a daily occurrence, we call Tapestry Health, and they come out and they send a cleanup team, and it's just a new spot, a new day. It's a repetitive cycle. It's unfortunate. And we just keep tackling it day in and day out, day in and day out. We're very fortunate to have a lot of grants, and so we're able to focus some resources on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Sean, would you like to? Sean?
Sure. So, I mean, just to speak to these sort of in the order that Jesus and the chief brought up, I do agree with Jesus that permanent housing is the lasting solution.
Yep.
But to answer your question, in the short term, I do think that the lack of a shelter in Holyoke is an obstacle. While it is not a permanent solution, I totally agree with Jesus on that. In many cases, when we go to remove these camps, at the end of the day, some of these people are either unwilling or unable to participate in some of the services or programs that are offered. And the best we can do is ask them to move along from private property. If they're not willing to go into a program, or for some reason they don't qualify at this very moment, or there's a wait list, as there are for some programs, all we can do is ask them to move along. And what happens is we can clean the site up, they'll move along, but in many cases it's a cycle. They come right back around, they'll end up in the same spots. And so you ask people to leave the park, they're gone for a couple weeks, they're on somebody else's property, or they're on the riverbank, or they're somewhere else. They get asked to move along from there, they go back to the spots they're comfortable. To answer your question, I agree with the chief. All these spaces that the homeless are setting up camps are private property. And so through a variety of laws, I mean, just from the housing code alone, you can't live in a tent. It's just illegal to live in a tent, right? So that I mean, that's one basis, but then you're trespassing, you're illegally dumping, you're creating a nuisance. There are a variety of enforcement tools that would help to deal with the camps. And, you know, some other towns have, after some of the COVID funds, you know, or programs ended recently, have really gone and cleaned up. I know for a fact that Northampton has removed a couple of large camps that they had along the highway and in some other areas in the town. So there's no legal obstacle to doing that. But at the same time, you know, we try to be sensitive. We try to give people an opportunity when we get complaints about dumping or trash. We give them an opportunity to clean up, to take what they can. A lot of these people, I mean, this is all they have, right? So we don't swoop in and just throw everything away. We give people the ability, hey, we're going to come back in a couple of days. We need you to take what you can, take what doesn't belong to you, clean up as much as you can. And then, you know, we clean up what's left, because you don't want to leave the nuisance behind. And I really do believe that, you know, anytime you hear about needles, Tapestry has always been ready and willing to respond to remove those. We also use the revolving fund from the vacant building fees to clean up some of these areas if that's necessary. And then the final part of this you know, initial agenda item here is that we are in talks about getting a shelter in Holyoke. I think the benefits of shelter are that you have a place to send people while they're waiting for services, and many of these shelters act as sort of a venue for wraparound services, right? So they're there every time they're there. There's access to services, to counseling, to referrals, even just to basic nutrition, to sanitation, to some of the things that it takes to bring people along. And that presence, I think, is a great asset. And what the city is exploring right now, because I think one of the main issues with shelters is you know, they're costly to maintain, to staff. They're a 24-hour-a-day operation, which means they're an expense 24 hours a day. What we're hoping to do is to get some grants together, put some paperwork together, and perhaps put the shelter out to bid, where you know, nonprofits or other operations could bid on, you know, running a shelter or operating some sort of you know, program like that. And then the city will see what they can do to reinforce that bid or supplement that. And that's sort of what we're in exploratory talks to look at now. And, you know, Friends of the Homeless runs one of the biggest walk-in shelters in Holyoke. And it would be ideal if an organization similar to that were to come in and do something in Holyoke. And I think that's what we're hoping for, as opposed to the city of Holyoke as an entity building and operating a shelter. I don't think that's tenable right now.
So you would want a nonprofit or something along that lines, contracting with the city, if you will, to try to make sure that we have that kind of program.
Correct. And they have the staff and they have the tools. I mean, right now we don't have a homelessness coordinator. We don't have social workers who are employed by the city to do outreach. Many of these organizations have that network of service already established, and it would be easier and I think more efficient to partner with an organization that already has the infrastructure and then support that than it would be to try to you know, redesign the wheel here in Holyoke.
Okay. So if I could ask the three of you, and I haven't seen any other hands right now, so I'll ask this question for the three of you. Just based on the statistics that I stated from Quincy, do we see a lot of domestic violence victims that are homeless? Do we see a growing elderly population? And I know we've got, because I know Jesus has been good. When I find a veteran, I call Jesus and he goes right down there, him or Wilfredo, and they talk to the person. Are we finding that those numbers are increasing, or is it, and obviously with the virus, with the COVID out there, the talk was that there probably would be more domestic violence. I don't know. I hope there hasn't been, but that's what the talk was. So I'm wondering if in the three experiences that you all have in your positions, have you seen growth in those three areas?
As far as veteran services is concerned, that's not been a trend. It's not.
Okay. So it's pretty much been the same, or is it going down a little bit, or?
No, what we're seeing now is, because of COVID-19, there was a $7 million grant given to SSVF providers like Soldier On and Veterans Inc. to provide emergency housing for those that are homeless. And a lot of people are migrating to Holyoke because, first of all, our department does a really good job with getting them transitioned into permanent housing. But we're inflating numbers of homeless people in Holyoke that are veterans simply because our department does a better job than a neighboring city or town. So what happens is the monies that are given for, say, SSVF and rapid emergency housing, that's given to local nonprofits. The federal VA then jumps in and has money for HUD-VASH, which is like a Section 8 voucher for permanent housing. But the HUD-VASH teams understands that there's certain cities that are easier to work with than others, so they lean towards Holyoke every once in a while to provide services for these veterans, and purposely place them in Holyoke simply because there's a one-day rule in Massachusetts. If a veteran spends one day in my community, they're responsibility of the city, and then we execute our mission and get it done. So we've seen an uptick in homeless veterans in Holyoke, but it's because of the SSVF emergency housing funds and the HUD-VASH.
Okay. Chief, have you seen any increase in those elderly or domestic violence people out in the streets?
No, I haven't seen that. Usually what we're dealing with is drug and dependency issue people.
Okay, and Sean, same thoughts, or?
I would say a large population that we encounter is drug and dependency issues as well. I will say, and I don't want to forecast bad news, but I will say that this moratorium of evictions is going to end. It might not end in October as initially expected, but it will end. And I do think that the aid that is provided will not necessarily cover everybody. And I do think that there's going to be at least a temporary uptick in homelessness in the near future, because a lot of people are, for a variety of reasons, are either not paying their rent or unable to pay their rent. And in order to qualify for these programs, in many cases, you have to seek them out. You have to go somewhere, you have to apply, you have to go through, there are steps to all of these assistance programs. And some people are unaware, some people won't do it, some people don't qualify because they're maybe living in a Section 8 house as a guest that they shouldn't be in, right, and they can't report it, or they're undocumented, or there are a million reasons why. But I do think that in the next few months, we are going to see a swelling in homelessness regionally. Really, I don't think it's just going to be locally. I think it's going to be a much larger issue nationally, because you know, the other shoe is going to drop, and people are going to be evicted, you know, when the courts do reopen and start hearing it.
Okay, thank you. And we have Councilor Leahy, and I know Councilor Jim Leahy, Councilor at Large, and he'd like to be presented. Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Do you hear me guys okay?
Yep.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you guys all for coming on tonight. My concern on this is we're talking about the homelessness at this point, is the fact that people are not standing on street corners any longer. They're standing in the middle of the street, and they're also not abiding by the you know, wearing a mask. And so people are now rolling down their windows and handing people money, and there's no masks involved. I see this every day. I'm also the city councilor who also thinks that this is a greater scale. I don't believe it's so much homelessness. I think this is almost human trafficking. In fact, I filed an order on this 2 years ago, saying that. So I'm looking at this as the compassionate side. I'm thinking that these people are suffering, but they're also getting trafficked. That's why I don't think there's any fights in street corners. No one's looking for territory. And I have a plethora of different reasons. But however, what concerns me now is I keep calling. There's a man in a wheelchair that's kind of going into the middle of the street. He's doing it, I mean, 7 o'clock now, it's dark out. Somebody's going to hit him, and it's going to be that person's fault. And not only that, though, the whole COVID-19, people aren't wearing masks. I mean, Terry, what can we do about this?
Chief, let me go to the chief and Sean, since obviously we're trying to have a mandate on trying to create health. But Chief, in terms of panhandlers going in the road and other things, because I've seen the same thing down on Main Street at 391. I mean, I'm not sure what the solution is, but how can we get any improvement, at least in terms of keeping them on the island, number one, and in fact, trying to get them where they are wearing masks, so if someone's reaching out and giving them money, they're also not as being subject to that?
Yeah, I mean, we can't hold everybody's hand. You know what I mean?
No.
Here's the deal with that is I drive by Main Street, 391, 10 times a day. That's the way I go back and forth to my house. And that guy, when I see him, he's always on the island. And sometimes he has a mask hanging off his chin. Sometimes it's up. I mean, it's bizarre. Obviously, he's drug addicted. People give him money. I'm sure if they give him money, he steps off, grabs it, and gets back on. I don't ever really see it. But I mean, most of the panhandlers that I see are, with the exception of the wheelchair guy, Councilor Lee. I've seen him once or twice. Yeah.
And where is he? Where is that?
Well, Chief. So I'm not talking about the person at 391, and I'm glad you get to go to your house 10 times a day. Just kidding. But I'm talking about in front of Freskopowski's fire station. They're not on the island. They're in the middle of the street. They're not staying on the island much at all. The person in the wheelchair is either in front of like the church near Mel's, or he goes up to near Lynch, or near the fire station. These people aren't standing. Say, it's 7 o'clock right now. I guarantee if I go by there, there's going to be somebody there not wearing a mask at all.
Well, first of all, we're not the mask police. Let's separate the issues here. I'm not the guy standing by himself out in the open. I mean, nothing in the world says he has to wear a mask. He's not. He's 25 feet away from everybody else. Now, if he's approaching a car, I mean, if you're going to roll down your window and give him money, you should. That's adult decision that you're making to do without a mask. So there's different issues here. If he's in a wheelchair, he's out in the lane. That's a problem. We can deal with that, but we got to make sure we separate the issues. And I don't want to split hairs, but.
Well, I'm not splitting hairs, sir. But when I was 13, 14 years old, I was hanging around in front of Friendly's. Alice would call the police if me and my friends would get moved off the sidewalk. We weren't allowed to stand in front of Friendly's. So I guess I don't understand the difference.
Okay, the difference is the law says in their city ordinances and all this other stuff, the 3 or more blocking a sidewalk you can't do. So if there's 3 or 4 of your friends on a sidewalk and you're outside of business and we all know the Friendly's thing. We all grew up in Holyoke. You're talking about 2 different things. You're talking about somebody standing on a sidewalk or an island, standing there by themselves. I have no authority to do anything about it. Zero. I just have no authority. There's no law that says I got to go move them, or I should, or I can move one person standing by himself with or without a mask. If they're out in the roadway and they are, the only thing that the courts allow us to deal with is what they call aggressive panhandling. That we don't really see that.
I would echo.
No, and the thing is, I hear what you're saying, Chief. You can only do what the law says. I wholeheartedly, and I think you're doing a great job. But it just, I'm Terry. I'm sure you're getting calls. People are getting, I'm just petrified of somebody hitting a person. I'm the one that's been talking about how I think this is total trafficking. I totally think that these people are in many cases being forced to do this. And God forbid one of these people get hurt. Whoever is driving that car, I mean, they're going to be, they're going to feel the wrath the rest of their life. The person who's getting hit is going to, it's a terrible situation all around.
Sean?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo sort of the chief on the mask. So it's a complex issue. The first part is if you are socially distancing, essentially if nobody is within 6 feet of you, the way that the mask mandate in this state works is that if you are more than 6 feet from somebody, technically you do not have to be masked. And the only authority that we have as a local board of health to enforce the mask mandate is I could issue this gentleman a civil citation for up to $300. Now, he lives on the street and is begging for money, and I can't see that the labor of issuing this man a civil citation for $300 is a justifiable effort. He has no property to attach the citation to. He's homeless, and so I can't force him to move from that spot because he's not wearing a mask. That's not written anywhere within the Board of Health's authority. I could declare him a public nuisance, and we could try to move him along that way, but he could just go somewhere else. The issue of homelessness and dealing with civil citations, their only means of enforcement, if you choose not to pay them, is to tie them to property. And if you own nothing and you live nowhere,
Sean, due respect, maybe it's not the fact that it's tying people to money, but maybe it's the education. maybe the fact that these people aren't getting the education, knowing that they're supposed to be socially distancing within 6 feet. Maybe they don't even know they're supposed to be wearing masks. You know, I'm just playing devil's advocate. There people are walking up to people's cars not wearing masks. People feel extremely bad. It's going to be around the holidays now. More people are going to be, giving money. I see both sides of it, but the thing is, we're trying to keep this COVID pandemic down, and yet we're having people that are handing out money to people that are coming up to the door. This isn't right.
I mean, I'm more than willing to give out masks and educate. But I mean, even with people who have the knowledge, many people are not wearing the masks, unfortunately. And I agree with you that that is a problem throughout the state and everywhere else. And it's not just the homeless that are having that issue. We have plenty of masks. I'll have an inspector go around tomorrow and start distributing masks and a little bit of education. We have plenty of documents in English and Spanish, and I have no issue with starting that way.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Councilor Leahy. I'm going to follow up on one of your questions, Councilor Leahy, because I remember when you filed that order, and I talked to you, and I thought it was a good order. In terms of, do we have any idea if there is some kind of human trafficking that's going on? I know I've actually taken the time for some of the people at 391 on Main Street to kind of watch where they go, and they all were going to the same place down in South Holyoke. And it was like kind of ironic that they were kind of like having a group meeting there. And I just wondered if we've ever had any inkling that might be happening. I guess that would be you, Chief.
Yeah, I mean, I hear all the rumors for the last few years too. What I would say, what it looks to me is they're a group of addicts, and they run in the same circles, and they take different corners, and they almost seem to relieve one and another one steps in. It's unfortunate. I don't know, but I do know this. We have outreach that goes out and speaks and offers some wraparound services and offers them, all the help and detox programs and referrals to beds and the opportunity there for one of them to ask for help. It's definitely there. But they have to let us know. They have to ask for help. We also have plenty of masks. We could give them a box of masks, but I can tell you right now, if you hand a desperate addict a box of clean, brand new masks, they're going to trade them for drugs. They're just saying what's really going to happen. So, we don't mind giving them out either, but then I'll be accused tomorrow of giving them a reason to stand out there and okaying it. So there's a balance here, and it's I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Councilor here, you all set? Councilor McGivern?
I am, Terry. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Councilor McGivern? You're muted, Joe.
Thank you. I'm co-hosting, trying to help Ryan out, and I can't raise my blue hand, so forgive me having to wave at you.
Your fist, I'll find.
If I could just get back to the tent cities, and just I heard what I think we all know. One, they're on, even if it's city property, they're on private property. That's against the law. Two, the vast majority are involved with some type of substance abuse, which probably means some types of injection, a narcotic, probably heroin. And three, they create a danger. It's more than a nuisance to society. And let me give you one example and see if we can work from here. I've visited the tent city over the dike that Terry talked about, over Springdale Dike. Quite frankly, if the mayor was here, I would suggest to him that we clean out the tents that are there and open up our own campground, because we can make some money. That is a gorgeous piece of property for a campground. And I don't mean that as a joke. I seriously mean that. It is incredible what's down there. But what's down there are people who, for whatever reason, are breaking the law, both what we've all talked about. And the danger is, how many times have we seen kids using Springdale Park, ride their bikes up the hill, up the road, ride over the dike, ride back and forth, get curious about what's down on the other side, go down on the other side, and what are they going to find? Disposed of needles, trash, health issues. That's the problem. It's not a nuisance. That's the danger to good people, to kids, And that's what we have to look at, and we need to clean these tent cities out of our area. It's wrong to let anyone, be put in harm's way when we know they're sitting there breaking the law. So what can we do to enforce the tent cities and getting rid of them?
Chief Sean, either. And I know we talked about, I know you get some, we have moved some of them out of there, but
If you let me know where they are, we can
behind the dike in Springdale Park.
Yeah, I mean, we have heard that complaint several times. We've had people moved on and have had those cleaned up as well. I mean, I can work with Mike McManus and city properties. We can get them cleaned out. I just think that the issue is until the people that are living there have a place to go, it is going to be a recurring, it won't be a permanent solution. It'll be cleaned up temporarily. It'll be a relief, but until there's somewhere for them to go, that they will come back eventually.
so
And I get that, Sean. And it's a reoccurring problem on the street corners, like Councilor Leahy points out. But when are we not going to do something, or when are we going to do something when some child gets pricked by a needle, and some parents have that child in the hospital and find out, well, I'm going to stop right there. Use your imagination.
No, anytime we hear about tent encampments, we have inspectors go out. We have inspectors go out, partner with the police, and
under the bridge on the rotary going around the Muller Bridge, down by the log pond on off the railroad tracks, and over the dike in Springdale. I mean, I can tell you where they all are because I have to go there.
Okay. I mean, we'll have someone go out there tomorrow.
You know why we're going there? Because they're on probation, because they're using drugs.
all set, Joe?
Thank you.
Councilor Leahy, did you want to talk in? Councilor Leahy?
No, Terry, I had my hand up and I forgot to take it down. I apologize.
Okay. And Jesus, are you all set, or?
No, I'll just go ahead and I'll add to what Councilor McGivern was talking about. There's, I used to walk around the War Memorial daily, and quite frequently we would have to call to get needles removed from our building. We've had people sleeping in front of on our steps, people urinating, by our steps. Those are all challenges. The other thing too is to remember, like, we don't have to be the heroes and create something that's already available out there somewhere else. There are resources out there. CSO with Friends of the Homeless out of Springfield is definitely a tool that we can use to refer people to go get help. There's other places for them to stay. So, housing them today doesn't have to be organic to Holyoke. There are other solutions and other communities that can assist us with getting these things taken care of, just as people come to us to use our services when they need us too.
Okay, thank you, Jesus. So, and just going back to the tents and what we can do when we get there. So let's just say you go, both the Board of Health and the police send someone to the dike behind Springdale or any of the other places that we talked about, and there's nobody there during the daytime. I walked a couple and there was nobody there. The tents were there, but there was no one else there. Can we take the tents? Do we clear out the tents, or do we leave the tents?
It depends. It depends. If we think that they're not coming back for a little bit, we're not going to be able to make contact with them. We'll call the DPW, see if they can come clean them out. Sometimes, most of the time, they're not too straying too far. So if they're behind there, then they're out in 391 or they're semi-close. So we try to reach out to them, and it's displacing them. We displace them, we move the tents, whether we take them or have them wrap it up and clean it up. This is going on daily. They move from one place, they go to another, we get complaints, we go there, move them along, they go back, they got to go somewhere. So we're chasing the tail, but we're trying to get them help. We're trying to do everything we can. We're cleaning up needles by calling Tapestry when we can. It's not an easy job, but we're out there doing it every single day.
I think all the councils are aware that it's not an easy job, and it's something, again, both from an aspect of health of the community, but also we're concerned about those individuals. We'd like to see those individuals get a better chance in life, and I'm all in favor. And it was kind of sad to hear that we think we probably have a higher panhandling level, and we get people coming from other communities to do panhandling here. And again, I'm not exactly sure why that would be, but obviously we've got the view that it probably is. But you know, the idea, and I agree with, it's not a temporary problem until we can resolve some of the other issues. Obviously, housing and economics play a role, but housing and drug addiction and other issues play a role. So we have, it's not a single answer, but I think from our perspective, and Councilor McGivern and Councilor Leahy, I don't want to speak for you, but from my perspective, you know, I think the more we can clean them up and make it so that they understand we want to help you, but we're not going to make it easy for you. If you're going to keep going to one place or another, we're going to just keep taking your stuff because you're trespassing. We're taking it. We're not leaving it there for you to move it to another site. And that may seem cruel, but I mean, my hope is that maybe we get more people to try to take advantage of some of the services that we do try to provide. And I know we try to provide a lot of services, and I think that's absolutely wonderful that we're trying to take the human element and deal with it. But, you know, same concerns that Councilor McGivern and Councilor Leahy. I have concerns about kids. I mean, I used to hang out at Springdale, and I used to go down by the river, and I know there are kids still doing it. And it's not just Springdale, there are other places. And so that's, I know we're not finding an easy answer here. I'm hoping, and I was kind of hoping the mayor might be able to come and talk about this in terms of where we're looking in terms of, do we actually have any potential homeless shelter for a while? And I know it's a temporary solution, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. But somehow we got to do more. And I know it's difficult to do more, and we got to try to clean these up, and we got to try to have fewer and fewer people that are depending on being out on these illegal campsites and doing things that are then causing problems for other people. So I think we probably have discussed it to its fullest. Unless anyone else would like to make any comments, I certainly would welcome anyone else interjecting if you wish, if you put your hand up. But if not, Councilor McGivern, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the order has been complied with.
Okay. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna try to stay in the early part of the order because I think I got a few other people. And then, Chief, as soon as the mayor comes, I'm gonna take them 4 and 8 together. Okay, but I'm thinking he's coming, but I'm not positive. Item 2, Councilor McGivern, if that is okay, we'll take up item 2.
Motion to take item 2 off the table.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Introduced by Councilor Hernandez. It's ordered serious concern on the removal of trash at 50 Clinton Avenue, property managed by Wayfinders. Met with landlord and learned that there is a clearance issue when a privately contracted trash removal company arrives for a trash pickup. They cannot obtain enough space to enter the area as to where the dumpsters are located. Management has been fined by both the city and the police departments for attempting at mitigating the situation and being penalized for it. I order a study to be conducted in an effort to find a solution to the situation. This property houses problems that helps young adult mothers get back on their feet. This landlord organization has a long ally to the city of Holyoke in bringing much needed social services to our residents. We need to ensure this issue is looked at and we cease all fines until then. So I'm assuming in terms of fines, and is there anybody from Wayfinder here? I did try to get, is anybody from Wayfinder?
Yes. Hi, Terry. My name is Mel Antuna.
Yes, we met last week.
Yes, I hope you all could hear me.
Yes, thank you, Mel.
I'm here accompanied with Zoraida Bellavista, who is the property manager for the property that we're talking about. It's at the corner of Dwight and Clinton. And the challenge with this particular property, we've had a challenge of trash for quite some time. And right now the trash sits in kind of like a courtyard, for lack of better terms, inside the building. And once a week, our staff, our property management staff, tries to roll out the container of trash And the challenge is where they roll it out onto the sidewalk is a legal parking space. And so over the years, staff have generated kind of no parking signs to put the day before to try to secure that location. So when the trash truck comes in the morning the next day, they're able to go in there and secure the trash and empty the container safely. And so what we've been trying to work with several folks, the police department, our DPW department, to try to see if we could assign one space in front of Clinton, no parking, to be able to allow the trash truck to do their job. You know, we mitigated the problem for long enough. Sometimes if we miss the truck, we pay for the truck to come back. And when they come back, somebody has moved the sign, and so they're not able to pick up. In other cases, we've had our staff move trash to another Wayfinder location that has been empty, but it's just becoming unmanageable. And for the health and safety of that micro community, we're asking the city to see if they could allow a no parking area to allow us to dispose of the trash responsibly.
And one spot, one no parking spot should be able to solve the problem?
That is correct. And so over the years, it's been a little easier because there was a building across on Clinton Street that for a while was kind of vacant. And just recently, in the last 3 to 4 months, that has been really fully occupied, which has caused more cars on the street. So it's even harder now to secure that location for the trash pickup. So we're just talking about one spot.
Okay. And Sean or Chief, are you aware of the ticketing that was going on? And or Mike? Any of you aware?
I reached out to Wayfinders to ask about the citations, and no one was able to provide me any documentation. I don't have any documentation in my office about any fines being issued, so I'm not aware that our office was.
There is no. I am not aware of any tickets that we've received from the police department. We have been working with the police, and I don't believe that any citation has been issued. I think that the message was we need to find a resolution, or we're gonna be forced to do something like a citation. But as I understand it today, there is no citation that has been given.
Okay, thank you. That clears up a lot, and it helps make this a little more understanding what we're trying to do. Mike, are you familiar with the situation? And I'm assuming the city doesn't do the trash pickup for them.
No, it's a private Republic Services.
Right. So, Mike, does the DPW go in that alley at all, or?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with this situation.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is not an alley. This is really sitting in the front of Clinton, and so we push the trash container out onto the sidewalk, onto the street. Okay. But we need a space to be able to put it out there so the truck could take it out.
So I know Clinton is very congested.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parking on Clinton. It's narrow streets, even though it's one way. It's hard for our trash trucks to navigate through Clinton on trash day.
Yeah.
When they do, they block traffic until they make the way all the way through the corridor.
Okay.
But if
but just on that aspect, I know it's not something you're fully, but if we were able to give them one spot where they can have their truck come in and get their trash and get out, chances are we wouldn't have a major issue other than probably having some complaint about less parking.
Probably.
Okay.
And it might be along the lines of no parking on a certain day of the week. That's perfect. We've done that in other places on, was it Elm Street?
That's the way to do it.
So no parking just on the day that they do their trash pickup. Is it a weekly trash pickup, Mel?
Yeah, and I think that we would be amendable to that. The challenge is on holidays. I think that, you know, they come on every Tuesday unless there's a holiday, then it runs over to the next day. So
Okay.
that presents a little bit of a problem.
They'll even come on Saturdays.
But it would be better than what you got now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have 21 families there. Excuse me, 19 families there that, you know, that.
Do you know, I mean, I'm going to take it one step farther in this. Do you know, is there a specific time that they come and pick up the trash?
No.
They give you a window of 6 hours, and depending on their route.
Oh, 6 hours? Is that what you said? Okay. But it is Tuesdays, other than holidays.
I know it's Thursdays.
It's Thursdays.
Okay. So if we made no parking Thursday from 9 to 5, 8 to 4, that should resolve it.
I think that would.
Other than the holiday week.
Yeah, the challenge is, you know, we're at their mercy and at their routes. Sometimes, you know, they'll come and empty at 4 in the morning. Sometimes it's at 10 o'clock in the daytime. So I think that even if it's a full day, that would give us a little more leeway. But I mean, we'll live with the holiday and work with the company to say, no matter what, it has to be picked up this day. Otherwise, it'll have to go into next week. So I could push pressure from that side.
Okay. Councilor McGivern, are you okay with that?
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Now, do you have a driveway on Clinton?
We don't. There is the side yard that does not have a curb cut. The trash is located, so the building is split up like a H, and the trash is kept inside both of the legs of the building. So it's rolled out. It's like a 4-yard container that's rolled out onto the sidewalk, and then the truck takes it from there.
Are you the corner house or the brick house?
We're the brick building in the corner of Dwight and Clinton. I believe the address is 1035 Dwight Street.
And 50 Clinton.
And 50 Clinton Street.
So you don't have any curb cut at all?
No.
That is correct.
I'm just asking because that makes a lot more sense. It's easier to, you know, keep a driveway open than to take parking off of a street. Where do your tenants park?
On the side street. There's no on-site parking. And you know, there's still plenty of parking on Dwight Street. Clinton gets a little more congested now that there's a neighbor building that has been completely filled. I mean, being as transparent as possible, I really don't see a major challenge for parking space for one day. When you look at the return on investment and having an area as clean as possible and making sure that we are able to dispose of trash responsibly, I think the return on that decision of one day will be beneficial for the city.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody, Councilor Leahy, are you all set? Okay. I think he is.
I am, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilor McGivern, would you be okay if we were to refer this, because we can't create the ordinance, obviously. Committee would refer it to the ordinance committee with the idea of creating a no parking at the appropriate spot.
I would suggest that we refer to the ordinance committee with a copy to the city engineer to give us some options. I'd like to know how many parking spots we would lose before, you know, making a decision.
Okay. So the motion would be that we would refer to we're going to refer to the ordinance committee with a copy to the city engineer to determine how many parking spots might need to be reserved.
Yep.
No, we have to do that because it has to get into legal form. It's not Doesn't take long.
Yeah, I understand that, and I understand it's gonna be one, but we have to go through the process. No worries.
Yeah, and you know, we'll get this out next Tuesday. Hopefully the ordinance committee and the city engineer can deal with it quickly, and then hopefully in about 4 weeks, maybe we can have a no parking on Thursday.
Well, great.
So that'll be our goal. We'll try to work on getting that resolved. Motion was made by Councilor Givens. My seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Third item on the agenda is introduced by Councilor McGee, Councilor Tallman, Councilor Bartley. Ordered that the Public Safety Committee invite representatives from the Boys and Girls Club in order to give an update on the cleanup efforts at the old ski house. Make a motion, we take it off the table. So moved.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
I'm writing my notes.
Oh, okay. Well, do a good job. You're in charge of being a host. We're in trouble, huh?
Well, you know, we're losing Ryan.
Yeah, I know. That's why we got to figure out how to get back. Eileen, this is where we obviously have invited you in. And we have Eileen Kavanaugh from the Boys and Girls Club. And if you can offer your thought on this, Eileen, we'd appreciate it.
Well, I'm not, I mean, I don't know if the council knows, but the buildings at Mount Tom have been demolished as of the end of May. So there are no structures left on the land right now. And that was per an order. We had a notice of violation that the building commissioner had put on us in April. And so we worked to actually demolish the buildings. So the main lodge, for those of you who are familiar with the piece of property, the main lodge is gone. The wave pool building is gone. The bathhouse and half of the burned garage building has been demolished. In working with Natural Heritage, they gave us the permission, but we needed to conduct the work before the end of May. So we've done as much as we can right now on the land according to Natural Heritage. We need to wait until if there is going to be any more cleanup, which I don't know if they'll allow us to do, to be honest with you. It would not take place at least until this winter, or when what they consider plant species and wildlife to be in hibernation.
Okay. So when would we be talking winter or spring?
Well, we're talking like a combination, Terry, to be honest with you. I have to work with Natural Heritage. So, I mean, right now the buildings are down and a majority of the debris has been cleared from the land. What is left right now are, in all honesty, Natural Heritage would not allow us to take the foundations out. So they consider the foundations habitat.
Okay.
And did not give us and would not give us permission. So right now we have, you know, essentially the cement slabs, the foundations left on the property right now, but that's it.
Okay. Councilor McGivern, excuse me, Councilor Leahy, I see your hand. Councilor Leahy.
Yes, sorry, I keep putting it on mute. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I also serve on the board of directors with Eileen, and Eileen's being very humble, as she always is. Eileen has been on top of this for a very long time. And I mean, to the fact that, as you can imagine, the amount of vandalism that's happened over the years, where the Boys and Girls Club, which is a nonprofit, a very large, successful nonprofit in the city of Holyoke, has put up multiple boardings around the windows, fence, only to get destroyed night after night. The Boys and Girls Club has stayed on top of trying to get this to be the cleanest area possible, trying to sell it to different people. As she mentioned, Natural Heritage has been kind of a, I mean, she won't say this, I'll say this. It's been a thorn in our side. It's been a complete thorn in our side. They won't let you do anything. We would have done, the Boys and Girls Club would have done so much more if we were allowed to. As she said, they're not even allowed to take away the foundation, because now there's, you know, different species of snakes and that sort of thing that are now habitat there. So I just want to say, I wasn't going to say anything, to be honest with you, but the thing is, Elaine's a very humble person, so I just wanted to go on record stating the fact that the Boys and Girls Club
I would second
has
that.
done quite a bit. Thank you.
I would second that. I worked with Eileen on a few things, and she's top notch. I agree. So if I think at this point we pretty much have done all that you can until either the either winter or early spring where they will allow you, and at that point they are going to allow you to remove the foundation?
Well, I'm not really sure, Terry, and
Okay.
I'm not entirely clear as to. Well, first off, I want to say thank you very much for all the kind words, Jim, especially. And you know, Jim is really right about. I know this piece of property looked incredibly neglected over the years, but it was the least neglected piece of property in Holyoke, in all honesty. And so we have worked really diligently as a board of directors to come up with as many opportunities as possible to come up with a plan for development of this land, and really have just been confronted with one obstruction after another over the years, certainly funding being our largest obstruction. So please keep that in mind. You know, it's been a kind of a challenging last several years since ownership of this land, economy-wise. And so I do want to say that, you know, this has not been something in which we've forgotten that we're owners on, and have tried to be good stewards of the land as best as we can, but we could not keep up with the vandalism. Like Jim said, multiple times I fenced off the entire property. I'll put no trespassing signs up on this land. I mean, the irony in this situation is this is a privately held piece of property that takes 2 miles to hike into, cannot be seen by any road, has no public access by vehicle at all. Yet for some reason, it was probably the most vandalized piece of property in Holyoke. So, I mean, I think that there's like a couple things. Like for me, I'm not sure whether or not we'll take the foundations down, Terry. I mean, there'll be an additional cost associated with that. I don't know if that's something we can afford. And to be honest with you, if Natural Heritage, who is, in all honesty, one of the highest environmental authorities in the state of Massachusetts right now, is telling me that I can't touch them, I'm not sure we'll have a choice. So I don't necessarily see it as a public safety issue any longer. I mean, in all honesty, I wasn't sure I really saw it as a public safety issue to begin with, Terry, in the fact that, like I said, this did not have public access. It was a no trespassing piece of property. The entire mountain is closed to public access. So, you know, Shore's property is closed, Trustees' property is closed, DCR, Wildlife, the quarry, everything is closed to public access, yet we couldn't keep people off of it. So, I mean, with that being said, I don't really know what more, I'll be honest with you, in terms of a plan. We don't necessarily have a plan in place unless I'm going to be told differently for where we are now. Our intent would be to leave the property as is, clean of structures, and see what Heritage allows there, you know, going forward.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Eileen. I appreciate your honesty and giving us the true thing. Councilor McGivern?
Eileen, did you say it's Natural Heritage?
Yes, yeah. So Natural Heritage is actually, for those of you who are not familiar, Natural Heritage is kind of like the stewards of our land in the state of Massachusetts. They are actually really set standards and policies around endangered species and wildlife, Joe, in particular. And so they are an entity in which DCR and the Department of Environmental Protection work really closely with Heritage, but in all honesty, Heritage sets the standards. And so when Heritage is telling you that you can't do something on a piece of land because it's considered a protected piece of land, which Mount Tom is, it's really very, 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 very difficult and very expensive and almost impossible to go around Heritage. So Heritage would be like the entity, if you all remember the challenge that Holyoke Community College had in building the second access road. And there was an issue with the box turtles and a couple box turtles migrating across the road once a year. Heritage would have been the entity that really prohibited that operation from happening, and where it took, you know, what should have been a year to maybe build a road, it ended up taking, I think, honestly, what, 6 or 7, maybe even 9 years to build that road. And the reason being because Heritage,
at least a dozen.
Yeah, because Heritage really started to create and stop the process multiple times over the species, so that, you know, they're really kind of like the overseers of protected land.
You know, I find it a little bit, I don't want to, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because we're live here, but very hypocritical when, where was Natural Heritage when the quarry was open and those trucks were down that road? You know, I mean, and to talk about a nuisance when they started hitting Northampton Street and going through our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're being treated this way. And I mean, sorry to the
No,
board.
and yeah, I
right.
appreciate it. And I think, you know, we've been quiet about it, Joe, in some respects, because we've been really unsure of what our plan is ourselves, especially around our funding model. But, you know, the reality is we are really been confronted with obstructionists is what they are. And that, you know, being able to develop this land under the current conservation restrictions that are on it, it's nearly impossible for a nonprofit like Boys and Girls Club. Let me put it that way. Is it impossible for a multi-million-dollar conglomerate or, you know, honestly, a huge kind of state agency like Holyoke Community College to get past heritage protocol? No, not necessarily, but it is certainly timely and expensive to do.
No, hang in there, and thank you for all you do. You know,
I
especially to work
appreciate
with
it.
the
Thank
kids
you,
down there.
guys.
Thanks.
I appreciate everything you guys do too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilman Gibbon, oh, Chief, Fire Chief, Jeff, thank you.
Yeah, Eileen, this is Jeff Preskopowski. I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you've done up there. Obviously, getting those buildings down is a big hazard taken off our map. As you know, we've had a number of fires up there over the past few years, and I'm really appreciative of the work that you guys got accomplished under some pretty adverse conditions. So I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. I appreciate everything HFD has done for us as well in terms of being responsive as possible. You know, unfortunately, it's difficult to always know what's going on in that property. Like I said, I mean, it's just such a hard piece of property to get to. It's amazing the amount of vandalism it's seen.
Well, thank you, Eileen. Councilman Gibbon,
The motion the order's been complied with.
Okay. So I'll second that. Any last comments? Councilor Leahy, are you all set?
I am. Thank you. And thank you, Eileen.
Okay, so I'll make the motion is made that the order has been complied with. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Councilor Gibbon, I assume you said yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I wasn't muted either.
Oh, boy.
Must have been too soft. Sorry.
Okay. Right now, I'm just going to stay with the agenda. Item 4 is introduced by myself that the Public Safety Committee meet with the police and fire chiefs, the director of ambulance service, and interested social service agencies to consider whether Holyoke should implement a 900 response program similar to CAHOOTS, which is Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets program used in Eugene and Springfield, Oregon. Make a motion we take it off the table. All in favor? Aye. So again, you know, obviously with everything going on, I'm just trying to see if there are ways that we can ease some of the pressure in terms of police response, Chief. And if we can do it and do it without jeopardizing any of the safety in the community. So that's really why I looked and I did some research on the CAHOOTS program there. And just a few things. They do have their response team would be a medic and a crisis worker. Their statistics were that 10% of the responses involved some kind of violence. Most of the time, it was dealing with citizens in distress, and then those citizens were referred to either some kind of drug counseling or other aspects. And they were, I think they in 2019, I'm going back to many years there. They handled 20% of the 9/11 calls in the area. And that area was 24,000 calls. So just with that in mind, and you know, I talked to people from their police department. They seemed to think they had good response with it, and they were pleased with it. But I just wanted to bring it up and see what the thoughts are, if there's something we can do to do two things. Number one, take some pressure off the police department. As we just talked about, we've got a lot of things going on in other areas where maybe the police department would not necessarily be the right or the best response at that particular time. So that's what I'm looking at, seeing if we do it. I know the cost, and I know, Chief, you know the cost, because you cited it before when we were early talking. But I just want to see if the potential benefits of getting that kind of thing and getting that training. And then obviously the other aspect that I asked about and I understood was the people that are dispatchers on 9/11 needed to have extensive training in terms of getting a very solid concept as to whether it should be a police response or whether it should be a cahoots response. Again, I think one last statistic, last year out of those 24,000, 150 of those calls did then require a police response. So just keep that in mind, that there were obviously some times where they thought they were going to be okay without it and then found out that they needed it. So I'll open it up to, and I know we've got the two chiefs. Do we have the head of the ambulance service? Is that Frank?
Yes, I'm here, Councilor.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming.
Yes. Yep, no problem. My pleasure.
So, I mean, that's why I filed it. And again, Chief people, you.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I looked at the cahoots. We have everything in place. We're already doing it. We partner with BHN. We have an on-staff BHN member who works with a full-time grant officer, Brian Summers. He goes out to any crisis call that comes in. They shoot out and they go out to it. So you have a combination of a police backup, but the main call will be handled by the BHN representative, Richard, who works in our building here.
You said B as in boy?
Behavioral Health Network,
okay.
BHN out of Springfield, but they work with us too. So we have that. We have mental health. I think we're at like 80% trained in a 40-hour course. Every one of our officers about 80% right now. We were higher, but through attrition. Okay. In a 40-hour course of crisis intervention, we also have, like I said, 6 full-time officers assigned to different types of services. We also have 3 full-time sheriffs. The only difference between what we're already doing, what we already have in place, is 2 things. One is we go 16 hours a day. They go 24 hours a day. I doubt that we get much calls for service between midnight to 8 for the actual cahoots crisis things. But and the city council puts $798,000, as I said earlier. If you want to throw $798,000, we'll call what we're doing cahoots, and it'll be beautiful.
I was going to write a check for you, Chief.
Yeah, we're really, Councilor, we're really doing it. We're doing it exactly there. We're doing it through grant money. It's a good system. It's a good thing. We understand the difference between a police call and a crisis call, and we have the services. We have referrals. Everything's lined up. I think we're doing what cahoots is. We're just not calling it cahoots.
Could you when the behavioral health networks, so do they come in a van, an ambulance? How do they arrive?
No.
And what is there? I'm assuming there's 2 people that come.
One, it'll be Richard. He works out of our building, and he'll jump in he'll either sometime use his own car that's provided to him, or he'll jump in an unmarked car with Officer Summers, or he'll meet a uniformed car there if Officer Summers isn't available for whatever reason. But they arrive on scene. They offer whatever crisis is going on, and always police intervention on a law enforcement levels. When somebody's in crisis, it's the last option. And we understand that. I think everybody does these days.
Okay. So we're responding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're responding with someone who has health experience on a crisis basis and a police officer coming together.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A behavioral, he works for BHN. He has a crisis.
Chief Preskowski, have you any thoughts on this?
Jeff, you got to unmute.
Yeah, Jeff, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I just want to dovetail what Manny said. They're doing a great job. They have a great program. I've actually taken the 40-hour crisis intervention training at BHN, the same one that Manny's officers go through, and it's an outstanding program. And kudos to them and what they're doing. You know, I think the important thing here is that the person in crisis gets the right services to give them the help that they need. It's not always the ER. It's not always going to jail. That's the benefit. It's getting that social service help. Right. That's going to help them in the long run. So kudos to HPD. They're doing a great job, and you know, whatever we can do to help, we're here to do that.
Okay. So, and if I can go to Frank McNeil from the ambulance service, So when we send an ambulance, we also send a fire department, right? Is that so?
Yeah, for these particular calls, generally we're interacting with PD. And the chief is absolutely correct. His folks have done a fantastic job with these types of calls. But I think it was Jesus that really hit it on the head earlier when he mentioned dual diagnosis. When we analyze our patient base fairly accurately on a monthly basis. And that's really the common denominator normally, is you're seeing somebody with some kind of behavioral issue compounded with either drug or alcohol abuse. When we really get involved, it ends up going to the emergency department, and that's where we're finding that there's cracks in the system, because there's little that they can do for those patients that we transport there. They might keep them there 4 to 6 hours, and then they're letting them free. Part of our presentation when we came to the city of Holyoke was a community paramedicine program. Because, when we did a deep dive on the city of Holyoke prior to entering the city, we really tried to look at what were the patient bases that we would anticipate. So this group of patients, we really came in ready to deal with. We had applied for a grant with the Holyoke Medical Center, a CHART grant aimed at dealing with the homeless and the addicted on a preventative basis. Now, 31 states have regulations that allow an EMS company to go out and do preemptive work. Massachusetts is not one of them. We've worked with Aaron Vega, Senator Welch. We've been in front of healthcare committees on both the Senate and the representative sides multiple times on Beacon Hill, advocating for these sorts of programs. Because what we found, and I think, Sean was alluding to some of the problems with the homeless and the tent cities. These are the folks that we wanted to try to go out and reach and do regular checkups on, to make sure, because a lot of these people are on meds. They're diabetics, and they have other issues that are compounded by their behavioral and addiction issues that we wanted to be able to and track is a bad word, or trace, but it's the we're all using now. But to go out on a regular basis and do vital checks to make sure they had their prescriptions filled, to make sure that they were being healthy in general, because a lot of times their physical issues are compounded and exaggerated because they're not filling prescriptions, and then they go into crisis. Because many of them count on their medications to maintain their stability from a day-to-day basis. And that's when, Chief Thiebaud and his guys are headed out there. So we really wanted to develop a database that we could have relationships with these people, so that from a day-to-day basis, week to week, we were even willing to put GPS tracking pendants on the homeless so that we'd be able to find them. The batteries would, go out every 72 hours. So every 48 hours, we were going to go out and exchange these pendants for them and give them a lunch and do vitals on them. So, that's the sort of thing I think that's really necessary in a city like Holyoke, is to interact with people while they're not in crisis.
Right.
To develop relationships with their neighbors, their landlords, their families, so that they could give us a call and go out ahead of their crisis. So there's multiple layers that many different states, and it's ironic you found the one you did with Cahoots, because that's a state that's really taken this problem by the handle and been proactive. And I think the chief is doing everything that they can under the state regulations, but it's all following crisis. So that's really where I think a lot of these folks need attention, is prior to that crisis.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and obviously, if we could do that, so I would love to talk to you at another time about the bill that you're trying to get the representative and senator to look at. So,
love to.
We'll get back in touch with you if that's okay.
Please do.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I think I've got it, and and then I'll turn, I think Councilor McGivern has a question, if I'm not mistaken. Councilor McGivern, I'll let you go and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to sincerely say thank you to the two chiefs and to Frank for the work you and the people that work for you that do in this area. Crisis intervention is, under any circumstances, difficult. We see, you know, the age-old question is it substance abuse that comes first, or is it the crisis, the mental health that came first? And oftentimes, even the experts cannot tell us. But what your law enforcement employees, your fire department safety providers, and the ambulance providers do is incredible under any circumstances in this area. But add some COVID issues to it, and it just triples the what's going on out there. And I just can't say enough good things about what you do. Chief, keep finding those grants, because our budget's getting worse and worse. But as soon as we find the money, we'll head it your way. But that's not the easiest thing to do these times. But hopefully that dollars are coming down. And you too, Jeff. You know, I know you're not spending as much as the chief is, but we'll do our best.
I'll say, Councilor McGivern.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Chief Febo, can I just ask one more? So, how much do we pay Behavioral Health Network? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know, but it's through the grant, whatever it is. It's a partnership grant. We have a part of the grant. The grant is part.
Federal grant, state grant? You know?
I think it's a state grant through the Department of Mental Health.
Okay.
Not 100% sure. We need Sergeant Hart for that. And son,
okay.
He's the guy with he's the genius behind the grant money. That's for sure.
The grant man.
He is the grant man. He's unbelievable. Does a great job.
He's done a job on that. Now, one last question, Chief. So, do we have any statistics when we are, I know you said 12 to 8, we don't tend to have a lot, but do we have any statistics as to how many calls on average you might get, or for the last year, what we got between midnight and 8?
Off the top of my head, no, I'd have to look it up, but I know that we had 634 calls probably in the last 11 or 12 months, and they were referrals to programs, and like I said, half of them were out of people that were not from Holyoke. 80 calls for crisis since August 1st. People with mental health, people just having breakdowns, all kinds of things like that. But as far as digging down deep into those stats, I can probably get those to you in an email. I just wouldn't want to speak inaccurately.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine. That's 634 calls. What did you say, from July?
No, I would say in the last 11 months, I believe that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to say January or July, but it's from July or January then, approximately. Right. Okay.
That was referrals to programs, and 80 calls since August 1st for actual crisis. Going out and outreach and for crisis.
Okay, 80 calls since August 1st.
Yeah. So I mean, the need is there. There's a lot. There's a lot of issues.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate. I mean, I've learned some more information here, and and again, so are all your police officers, and I'm take that 40-hour crisis intervention program?
Well, the goal would be to reach 100, but we teeter-tottering around 80% now. We were at one point, we're almost 90%, but through attrition and people coming and going, and we're never going to have 100%, but we're trying. The classes are only like twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, but they're a full week-long class, and it's pretty intensive, as the fire chief, Jeff, told us. Okay.
And then I'm just going to make one last thought, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. So based on all these ideas that it's a crisis call, the behavioral health network person, I'm assuming they take the lead with your police officer offering assistance when need be, and then they react if it becomes anything more violent or whatever.
Absolutely. That's the key. And one thing to mention also is they do follow-ups. Like if somebody's in crisis today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they give them a day or 2 or 3. Sometimes they're involuntarily or voluntarily committed for, a day, 2 or 3. Then we follow up and we go out with the counselor and Officer Brian Summers, and they reach out and say, hey, how are you? Is it okay? Next time, if you feel it building up, give us a call. So, we're doing proactive, reactive. We're trying to do everything we can.
Okay. And then the last thing, it seems like we're referring them to not to ER in most cases, but to agencies or organizations that might be able to deal with their specific crisis.
Yeah, we run the gamut. We have everything, all the tools that are at our disposal. We have resources, pamphlets, booklets, and people on call. We can get them beds, detox, in a very, very short order. Stay with them, transport them, whatever needs to be done. We can do a lot through these programs.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councilman McGivern, are you all set?
All set.
Okay. Chief
Make a motion to order is complied with.
Make a motion has been complied with. A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Am I doing better?
You're on top of your game. Okay. Item five on the agenda is ordered by Councilor McGee. Ordered that the Board of Health come before the Public Safety Committee to discuss the update on committee on COVID-19 procedures for City Hall employees, departments, and in the City Council.
Make a motion to take off the table for discussion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sean, you're back up.
Hi. So, I mean, I think right now we're in a holding pattern with COVID-19 as it pertains to City Hall. Things had been looking pretty good in Massachusetts the last few weeks, but if you look at the metrics, things are going up now statewide. Case counts are rising. If you look at the map that was released today, there are almost 20 communities that are now in the high risk area, particularly in the eastern half of the state. But 2 weeks ago, when we were in the green for the first time, Holyoke was in the green. A number of communities around us were either in the green or the gray, and now Holyoke is in the yellow. There's a red. A number of communities that were gray are green. There's a regional spike, and it can be, you know, I'm getting to answer the question by providing some context.
Yep, no, that's right.
There are, every time you open services up, every time you put kids in school, you open up the capacity at restaurants, you allow, you know, coming Monday, you're going to allow performance venues to open up. The more opportunities you provide people to gather, to be in confined spaces, case counts are an inevitability. Masks and social distancing are a great way to minimize the risk of transmission. They do not eliminate it. The best way to eliminate transmission is to avoid spaces like that. And I'm not here to preach about what people do, but you know, when you go to places where there are a number of other people, particularly where there are a number of other people without masks, there's a much higher risk of getting sick. And so currently City Hall remains closed to the public, and my reasoning for that, and a number of other communities' reason for that, is the best way to provide a continuity of services is to minimize the risk for transmission internally. If we have comfortable, safe employees here in City Hall who feel like they're in a sanitary, controlled environment, life will go on. You're going to make adjustments one way or another. If we were open to the public, the current COVID requirements still require restrictions on the number of people in the buildings. They require a restriction of the number of people in public offices. They require social distancing in the offices. So even if we had never closed our doors, there would still have to be a shuffling and a change in daily operations one way or another. A number of employees throughout this have expressed concern or discomfort even in the scenario we're in now, which is not being open to the public. And my fear is that the people who are the most likely to come into City Hall for services are also the people who are the most likely to be doing other things in person, which is a high risk activity, which means they're a higher risk for spreading this, you know, viral infection, and it's highly contagious. And we have a number of people in City Hall who have pre-existing conditions, or they have loved ones at home that do. And, you know, our schools are not open right now. There's a very small number of in-person hybrid learning, but, you know, I don't think we should rush to reopen City Hall. I don't think there should be a push to throw the doors open. I really do think that we can always improve the access to services we have now. And I think the next logical step would perhaps be to transition to appointment-based access if in-person services were an absolute necessity. But right now, offices they should be operating at full or near full capacity. Department heads have, the decision-making. If their office is capable of safely supporting a full staff, then they can have a full staff as long as you're able to maintain distance. You should probably keep a window open. Everybody wears masks, unless they're in their own office or a confined area alone where they don't need to wear a mask. You maintain a cleaning protocol in the office. There's no way that the DPW is going to be able to sanitize to the level that's optimal. People are going to have to take their own responsibility for their own work areas. We've worked really hard to make sure that gloves, masks, sanitizer spray, hand sanitizer is available in every office. So we leave department heads the flexibility to make the decisions that lead to the most productivity and comfort. So in my office, my clerks, I have 2 clerks, they share a space, so they alternate times that they're in. They both work the same amount. There is overlap when they transition, but they're not in the same space at the same time because there are some pre-existing conditions there. We have some inspectors that rotate days. They work from home. They're inspectors, so being at a desk is not a necessity 5 days a week. So we do what we need to do in our office. Many other offices are doing the same through a lot of the technology that was provided. Some new laptops are being rolled out by the mayor's office that is really lending itself to remote work. And then right now we're getting bids to have City Hall Annex and some other municipal buildings cleaned with an electrostatic cleaning company through some grant money that we got from the state. And we're exploring some long-term solutions. I don't think that a reliance or a demand for PPE, for hand sanitizer, for gloves, for masks is going to go away. COVID is going to diminish over time through a variety of factors, the release of a vaccine. I'm not herd immunity, but people will modify their behavior and there will be some adjustments made throughout society that will minimize the transmission risk. I think people are going to start, these temporary changes will become permanent behavioral changes. But I do think that people are going to want masks. So we're looking at putting up systems when we do reopen to the public. If you need a mask, if you need hand sanitizer, if you need gloves, they'll be easy to access, easy to replace, easy to stock. The city can get them from, a typical, at sometimes with PPE right now, it's a little bit of beg, borrow, and steal. You're getting them from whoever has it. But when things become a little bit more smooth, we can standardize it. We can, really focus on making sure it's efficient and not costly, and that it just be like stocking paper towels or toilet paper or anything else. It's somewhere that's well organized, clean, and it's a regular city operation like anything else. Right now, it's sort of a distribution based off of need. Some people need KN95s or N95s. Some people only need cloth or surgical masks, gloves, hand sanitizer. It really depends on what's going on in the office. I think that pretty much sums up where we are. I mean, citywide, there shouldn't be any interruptions to office continuity at this point. There's not a need for that.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you, pretty much, even though we're not open to the public, departments are getting relatively close to full capacity, with the exception of someone who might be at risk, especially at risk, and or if they're in a very consolidated space.
Yeah, I mean, the guidelines currently say that your building should operate office buildings should operate at 50% capacity, right? And that you should, as much as possible, encourage people to work remotely if that is able. That's still what the office guidelines, they've said that since phase 2.
Yep.
50% capacity can be looked at 2 ways. You can either look at individual departments as an office, and you could sort of assign it that way where you want to reduce the number of people in each office, or you can look at it as the entire building, City Hall being one building, the annex being the other, and you operating at 50% of the occupancy rating for that structure. If you go that way, neither one of these buildings is ever at 100% capacity. They're huge. A lot of the space is not used. I mean, like the ballroom, for instance, is hundreds and hundreds of square feet that's unused. So you know, it comes down to looking at accessible, used space and making the adjustments there.
And making sure they're separated.
Yeah, and that people are really comfortable. You want mental health is a huge part of some of the COVID issues that are here, and some people deal with it really well, and you know they don't break stride, and other people, the change in routine, the constant concern about getting or spreading COVID, it really takes a toll. So you want people, healthy, happy people are productive people.
Okay. Councilman McGivern, are you all set or?
Just a quick comment, Sean, thank you. And I think you're on the right track and certainly explain it the way it needs to be explained. No one likes what we're going through, and I don't know what normalcy is going to be in the future, but I hope it's a little better than what you just projected, and that we do find that immune vaccine that, you know, will make it a lot safer for everybody. And I know, you know, my only question is, and you've talked about this before, and I'm very curious about it because I think it kind of fiddled out. But what's the status of contact tracing?
So it's never ending. Is the contact tracing is every minute of every day at the Board of Health and at, I mean, if you're talking just about Holyoke, I'll try to keep it as I'll try to be brief. But a case comes in, depending on the case, really, and some we try to prioritize. Either it will be handled directly by Debbie, the public health nurse, or we have a temporary employee who's covered through CARES Act funds, also in the medical field, who works with Debbie. She speaks Spanish fluently, so she's been a real asset to Debbie to make sure. A lot of what we do is education, right? And so the only way to explain concepts to people is to do it in a language they understand. So we brought in someone who speaks Spanish, competent with you know, the medical nuance. And so the case comes in, we call that person, we explain what they need to do, we get their close contacts. If they're employed in Holyoke, we will call their employer, we'll verify the close contacts that they have provided us against what the work may have also picked up. I mean, sometimes people are stressed, they're confused, they leave things out. So we'll say, if they say, well, I was close to these 3 people at work, we'll call the employer, verify that they're aware of the case, make sure that they follow up. And this is all part of the contact tracing, making sure that the employer does what they need to do. If they're a restaurant, they have to close temporarily. If they're a pharmacy, they have to shut down the area for cleaning. If they're a warehouse, they need to close and clean the area the equipment they worked on, for instance. And then we get a list. You know, a lot of times when people give us the names, they don't know the person other than, oh, well, that's Jack Smith. Well, the employer is going to have name, address, phone number, date of birth, and that's the information we use to put into the Maven tracking system. That information is then available in case there is case spreads, so we can see, here's the first case that brought us to this person who now tested positive, and we can go back to the person that identified this case as a, you know, close contact, and then if this person gets sick, we can follow that out to the next person. So it creates a spider web of the spread, and so you can track possible clusters that are forming. You can look at households, and then what's really nice is the state has set up the contact tracing collaborative, and what's good about them is we do surrender some of the control over the observation. You have to rely on this other agency because we can't handle everyone in office. But what's great about the CTC is that their services is not just the contact tracing. They offer food assistance. If you're an elderly person who lives alone and you have to quarantine for 14 days or isolate, they can get food delivered to your house. They can have someone come walk your dog or bring your medication to you. They can make sure that you have access to telehealth if you need to see your doctor or you have other questions or you're having medical side effects. I mean, that there is now comprehensive access to services to help and incentivize people stay in quarantine, to isolate, and then also, to make sure that employers fulfill their obligations to allow people to stay home and to make sure that they're not keeping a possible spread within the facility.
Let me interrupt you. And I appreciate that because I think I've told you before, we've talked about contact tracing, the importance of it as a tool to help stop the spread of COVID and the importance of it, you know, that's been preached from the state on down, not just Massachusetts, but many states take it serious. But I guess my real question is, does it work? And more important, let me ask you a specific question. Someone comes down with COVID in City Hall. What do you do? What have you done?
Okay, so someone comes down with COVID in City Hall. The way we do it is if they're a resident of the city, the test results come
they're
right
an
to us.
Employee of the city.
Right. So there's a difference here. If they're a resident, the results come directly to us. If they live in another town, the results of their test will go to that town. So either that town will contact us, or the employee will contact us, or we'll get their test directly. And typically it's divulged immediately to their supervisor, who will contact us. We reach out to them. We do the contact tracing. The office is closed. The DPW comes in, sanitizes the office, all the major surface areas, high touch points. We use EPA.
Are employees notified of who has the COVID?
The employee typically will notify their supervisor, and then either the supervisor or the employee, based off of the employee's comfort, will notify us. And that is a secondary layer to us getting that result through the Maven system. So either our community.
I think your answer is no.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If someone comes down with COVID, works in City Hall, are other employees notified of who that is?
That's illegal. It's illegal to do that.
In light of COVID and how contagious it is, don't you think that should be made legal?
No, that's protected medical information. Well, I mean, if I came down with a communicable disease like hepatitis or, I don't know, herpes or anything else, it's not, that information is yours. And I do not think that it should be made public, because people can be abusive. There can be discrimination. It's been proven that leaked medical information leads to issues. And I think that that is your private information, and it should only be shared with medical professionals.
So how does contact tracing work?
We are, as a board of health and as the nurses that work in the offices, the state, those are all medical professionals. And so they are obligated by law. They're only allowed to communicate that information. For instance, every person who's positive has a Maven number that's assigned to their case. And that number cannot be shared via email. It can't be faxed. It has to be transmitted through a secure communication. So it's only going to another HIPAA qualified organization or person. You can communicate over the telephone because that doesn't leave a permanent record. You can communicate through, if you have encrypted email, that's how the state communicates with us, or the Maven network, which is a shared network that you have to take a test and be accredited by the state to use. And that's the main transfer of information other than phone calls. That's a secure portal only for local boards of health, nurses, and state employees. And so that's how that works. And so if you have COVID, you don't have to tell your supervisor. The only person that you need to really speak to is your local board of health and your primary care provider. And then people are not stupid. They know what's going on, even if that, if you work in an office with 10 people and one person is gone for 14 days, most people will know what's going on. It's not hard to put two and two together, but the office is closed. We clean, we sanitize, we follow all the CDC guidance. And I don't think that coming out and saying, John Doe has COVID is going to make the situation safer for anyone.
I appreciate that. And I understand the legalities, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that there are other employees within office buildings. So let's get away from City Hall. People who work the front door, people who are custodians, people who are delivery people, people who are coming and going that could spread COVID, maybe unknowingly, not intentionally, of course. And if we find that out, don't you think we have to tell other employees that they could have been exposed?
That's what the contact tracing is so we call.
But it sounds like it's if someone is willing to let that go forward, contact tracing is initiated.
So well, there's two parts to this. If we get a positive test, we follow up with that person. And so to your point, yes, if you don't want to talk to the government, so to speak, you don't have to answer your phone. You don't have to return your mail or answer your mail. You don't have to give us anything. And I'm not able to force that information from you. I mean, as a Board of Health, I'm not even allowed to ask you for identification or mandate it. I can say, hey, tell me who you are. But if you don't want to tell me, I don't have the legal authority to force you to provide that information. So yes, contact tracing can be affected by an individual's willingness to participate. I would say that is a small majority. Most people, they know that their personal information can't be shared, and so they are comfortable working with us. And then we notify the employer, who notifies the possible employees. You have been exposed to someone who is positive with COVID-19, just like in the schools. The people who are close contacts are notified. Other employees are notified that a case was in the facility, but they are not close contacts. So we give them as much information as we can without saying the person's name. And 90% of the time, you can figure out who that person is by their noticeable absence over the course of time.
It's only 1% of the time that leads to a funeral. When it doesn't happen.
It's an imperfect system. I agree. I think that if we were really concerned about the safety, it would be that we put more legal stress on people who don't comply with the mask order and who don't comply with the gathering orders than it would be to expose people's personal information. Those are the people. I mean, in other countries, the penalties for not wearing a mask or for having gatherings is pretty steep, and it's not just a fine or a civic citation. And those are the people who are responsible for the continued spread. It's not a failure to disclose people's information.
There's a new saying in New Hampshire: live free, don't wear a mask and die. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. I think we're all set in terms of the order, and I'll make a motion it had been complied with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 2-0. If it's okay with you, Councilor McGivern, I'd like to go to item 7 since we've got Sean and the chief, and next 2 items I think we'll.
So moved.
So we're going to go out of order. Item 7 is introduced by Councilor McGee and Anderson Burgos. Order that the Public Safety Committee invite the Board of Health in to address and review the leash law. And Chief, you may have some comments on this as well. So, since neither of you, I'm assuming there's been some complaints about dogs, but I have not heard it. And I know we've got Eric from the Department of Public Health as well. So thank you, Eric.
Thank you, guys.
So, have you had more complaints? Have we had more problems?
We have had our fair share of leash law, loose dog typical calls, whether they're accompanied by an owner and or a person caretaker, or they're alone. The weather is still nice enough to sort of have these things sort of happen. Dogs get away from people, accidents happen and such. And then there are other people that just really kind of don't necessarily understand the fact that it's not okay to let my dog out doing its thing and then it'll come back, because oftentimes, like I just had yesterday, they don't come back, or they come back very injured, where I had to get a dog that was hit by a car, unfortunately. It just, these things happen. The issue that I'm having with our sort of leash law and under Chapter 14.5 is the exception of Part A. Exception 1, Part A of that says that, and don't get me wrong, our leash law is very strong, and I like it. We could be more strict than the state, where they only have under Section 174B a restraint issue, or they talk about restraining dogs on like highway rest areas and such, where we sort of talk about restraining dogs all throughout the city. And so one of the exceptions that we're having, and we've had a little bit of issues over the last few months, are dogs who are, according to chapter 14, if they come back under adequate voice control, they are considered to be under restraint. However, the adequate voice control part is the part that a lot of us are in animal control and such are having an issue with, is because things happen, accidents happen, dogs see something, they dart across the street, they'll get hit by a car, or in just a recent case where a dog ends up attacking and killing another dog and biting the owner at the same time. All could have been preventable if had the dog been on leash. And I think this exception should maybe be looked at a little more closely, maybe possibly an ordinance about maybe possibly getting it removed, unfortunately, because there are so many situations where accidents happen and many folks and other animals could be at risk.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Yeah, I was just gonna sort of dovetail with Eric. The two cases I think that come to mind that I believe I spoke to Councilor McGee about this. For him, he was contacted about a recent incident in Chicopee, obviously not within the confines of Holyoke, but there was a woman who, she was attacked, her dog was attacked by an off-leash dog and it was killed. And then, now going on almost 3 months ago, we had a similar issue where a person was walking their dog on leash and an off-leash dog came off of, it was on its own property, and there was an altercation right at the edge of the property, right on the line, on the sidewalk, where the sidewalk meets the house or meets the yard, and there was an argument about whether or not, that dog was under voice control, but there was no fence, there was no leash, and that dog was killed on scene, and the smaller dog that was on leash was killed, and the owner was injured, and that has now gone through a dangerous dog hearing. It's gone through a hearing with a magistrate at the court, and now it's going for another hearing for the final appeal. And the dog has been essentially whether or not the euthanasia is going to go through. But this all could have been, if that dog had been on a leash, none of this would have happened.
On its own property. Right.
I mean, it's a pit bull. It was on its own property, but it was not responsive to voice commands, and it attacked a dog that was, as far as we were able to tell, on the sidewalk, which is where, a dog on a leash is able to be.
Sure.
And, there was injury to an animal and to the animal's owner.
If I can just ask one question on that. So our leash law allows someone, if supposedly they're going to respond to a voice command, as long as they're on their own property, not to have a fence?
Negative. No, as long as, the way it reads is the dogs should be on a leash, of course.
Okay.
With the exception of an off-leash dog and the sort of the owner having the leash in hand, as long as that dog comes back under adequate voice control, and a dog which does not respond to voice control would not be considered under restraint. This is the way it reads currently. I've had a couple of conversations with the law department about this, and we kind of feel the same. And there, to avoid moving forward issues as we just had in Chicopee and here in the city itself, I think it would be a good idea to maybe look at that and maybe changing the wording.
But
Okay.
Terry, to clarify, if you have a leash nearby and you feel you're under verbal control of your dog on your property, you do not have to have a fence.
Okay. But if he's out there, he or she is out there by themselves, and there is not a fence, they can't be out there.
Then
Correct.
he would correct. Then he would be then considered to be off leash.
Okay.
During this whole beginning, I understand that folks may seem or may think sometimes that animal control, due to their hours or maybe our city hall being closed, that we're not around. But I haven't skipped a day, and Sean can attest to that. The police department has always been able to sort of reach out and ask for help anytime, and we've always been there. As likewise, they've always been there for us.
Okay.
So if they see something, again, we can't force folks to give us their information, but if the police is with us, then absolutely.
Okay. Chief, have you seen or have you heard your officers indicating a higher percentage of dogs not being leashed or not being controlled?
No, I defer all this to Eric. I hear Eric on the radio all day. You know, I don't. I wish I had. I mean, I don't have the in-depth knowledge of that. I just learned a lot from Eric, so I'll defer it to Eric.
Okay. All right, Eric. If you don't mind, Eric, would you mind? And you can email it to me if you would be kind. Just what you think we might want to do in terms of changing the ordinance.
Sure, absolutely. We can. I can consider. Rather, I'm sorry. I can continue my dialogue with the law department, see what word we can come up with.
Yeah.
And absolutely, we can maybe make some amendments to this section of Chapter 14. Obviously, everyone would be on board. I would assume, just to make sure that no accidents moving forward could lead to things that has happened recently here in the city and in Chicopee.
Can I ask one other question? So let's just, in a situation, let's say that was the case, and that dog went and started to go after the other dog, but ended up, whatever reason, stopped. Is there a fine because of that? Would there be a fine?
Well, there is a fine associated with leash law, and I think that it goes 25, 50, and 100 for a subsequent offense after 3.
Okay.
But I think that the reason why this sort of was put in place to begin with is sort of to not deter folks that go to the park and want to, throw a frisbee with their German Shepherd or whatnot. I think it was, but unfortunately, some of the actions that we've been seeing from irresponsible owners have led to us maybe thinking otherwise about this and being a little more restrictive.
Okay.
Yeah, we could always put an exemption in there for designated facilities, right? I mean, if there was some feeling that there should be an area where a dog can be off leash in the city, we can always tighten the regulation and then say, if you're at a dog park or if you're at these certain areas in the city, then you're exempt. But I do think that there could be some fine tuning that's available for just day-to-day, downtown areas.
Okay, so if you don't mind, if you and Eric can work on putting sort of thoughts together and sending it to us, I think we obviously are interested in trying to make sure we improve the overall without being overburdening on people, but making sure that we're in a situation where someone walking their dog is not being threatened.
Yeah, and keep in mind that folks, we all under Chapter 14 currently still have, if people want to go to the park and they're on school property for whatever reason, they're not allowed to be off leash anyway. So we still have things like that, but yes, we could be a little more restrictive. I think the wording would be what we need to work on.
Okay. All right. If you can do that, that would be good. Councilman McGivern, are you all set?
All set, Mr. Chairman. Do you have a suggestion here, or?
Yeah, I make a motion that's been complied with, and that we'll expect some communication from Eric and Sean in terms of how we might tighten it up a little bit to make it even safer. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is introduced by, probably originally by Councilor LeBron Martinez, but it was signed by all the councilors. In order that the city include, not limited to the boards of health, the Holyoke Public Police Department, Department of Public Works, take serious measures especially during the COVID-19 epidemic and beyond in regards to the sex trafficking activities, John, surrounding the corridor on Maple Street, Cabot Street, Chestnut Street, Essex, Appleton, Dwight Street, and last but not least, Elm Street, that the DPW place receptacle trash around the streets, listed areas for litter left behind, I did invite the mayor. I did not get a response. He was invited last week by Ryan. I haven't had a response. I was hoping he was coming, since I know he responded the other day with the charter rules saying he wasn't making it, but I did not. And for that, Chief, I apologize. I thought he was going to be here for this item. So, but if we can take this up, obviously, Councilor LeBron had serious concerns, and I know
take off the table for discussion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. So, but either way, we can, I mean, the order is pretty self-explanatory. The one thing I didn't quite get in terms of the DPW was the idea that we would place receptacle trash around the streets. Mike, can you start there in terms of trash and what kind of public access to trash we have?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what we have out on the streets. I know that we have it more downtown. We used to have trash out on in the South Holyoke neighborhood.
Yeah.
I do not believe we have any trash receptacles out there. We might have something on the corner of Appleton and Beach Street at the park.
And if I'm not mistaken, Mike, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the ones on South Summer are the ones that I had to communicate with you because they were constantly being overflown, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that would be my concern with this as well. If we put trash barrels out in a neighborhood, that it could easily become overflowing with regular household waste and not just litter. And my other concern is with the manpower to empty them and keep them clean.
Chief, I mean, I know you and I have talked about this area since I got back. I know we've had a few arrests recently. I'm not sure if they were specific to that area, but can you just go over?
Yeah.
Are we seeing it getting worse? Or better?
We're out there every day. It's been a challenging area since I lived there when I was a kid. It's just a tougher area. We're out there every single day with everything I talked about earlier with the outreach and the grant officers and trying to get people around the library offering resources. We're doing all of that, and then Captain Pratt and the narcotics unit are doing the other side of it and going after dealers. We're just out there every day. It's a never-ending cycle. We're doing the best we can with the resources that we have, and yeah, it's a tough job. I mean, that's just one area of the city. We got challenges in the flats lately. We got challenges in South Holyoke. We got challenges, in a lot of areas, and we're doing the best we can with the resources we have.
Do you think that's one of the highest concerns areas, or
yeah, it's up there. It's up there. It's active every day. Our guys are out there, even with the sheriff's department, trying to keep a lid on it. It's just displacement. You put a little pressure on them around the library. They move over to Chestnut Park. You put some pressure there. They're down on Sergeant Maple, Sergeant High. It's a never ending. It's tough, but we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. So in terms of prostitution and things, I mean, are we able to, or have we been able to find? I mean, I'm assuming they're being sponsored by somebody. There's just too many of them, or are they all, or is it more related to drugs?
Well, it's one and the same. They're out there. They're prostituting for drugs and things like that, and being trafficked, and it's been the same for decades. It's a problem, and we're making arrests. We're offering services and just chasing the tail every single day. My guys are out there doing an outstanding job. I know some people, I get a lot of complaints, and we address it the best we can.
Yep. So is it a revolving door? You pick them up and then they're back out there in a couple of days or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, when the court shut down too, I mean they just basically do a video arraignment and they're right. It's even faster, and they're right back out there, and that's.
Okay. Do we know where? I mean, I have an idea where some of the drug dealers live, but do we know where the prostitutes live?
I don't, but I'm sure some of my narcotics guys.
Sean, you got any idea on that?
I would say I do not know where the prostitutes live, but I would say that this does tie in with the previous conversation we had. A lot of these people are desperate, and a lot of them don't have anywhere to go. And, you know, I think access to services, you know, the chief has guys out there every day providing services, but I really do think that if there was a drop-in space, that would be another layer of, you have in-person services being brought to them, and then you have a place whenever they're comfortable, whenever they're ready. They can go to get away, or they can go to start to make a break, because I mean, a lot of these people, it's a cycle of dependency on not just substances, but on the people that they're involved with. And, you know, for us in the Board of Health, for a lot of these issues, you know, I hate to say it, but the way that we're organized, we're more of a reactive organization than we can be proactive with things like prostitution. Now, you can do education, you can do outreach. We're not allowed to provide medical services, but you know, reproductive health is a big issue for many of these people who are employed in the sex work industry. We do a lot of outreach when it comes to, you know, hepatitis vaccines, when it comes to, you know, we're doing a public flu clinic. You know, we try to reduce the spread of some of the associated diseases that are tied to this industry. And then also, you know, through HashPack and through some other organizations, we try to provide free contraceptives, free services, access to clinics, because I mean, you know, there's a whole nother level here other than just the criminal element. I mean, this is also a medical and a public health issue. You know, these women or men go on to have lasting effects in their community, you know, in the spread of some of these issues. So when it comes to trash and needles, you know, as soon as we know, we try to get out there. You know, we try to patrol the alleys. We always send out, you know, a seasonal letter, especially in the spring, to maintain the vegetation behind your property in the alleyways, because those act for many people as a cover for sex acts, as a bathroom. You know, I mean, a lot of people who are out here as prostitutes don't have access to facilities. So we try to stay on top of that, but it unfortunately, it puts a lot of the responsibility on property owners, and, you know, they're not the ones contributing to this, but unfortunately they're the only responsive party. So we do the best we can. We try to be understanding with the community members there, with the businesses. I am hopeful that when the library commons construction is done and those buildings are occupied and there is a real active community there, that I'm not saying it's going to eliminate the issue, but I do think that having occupied spaces where there are people living and going about their daily activities, in many ways that can diminish some of the crime that's associated with vacant buildings and blight. And, you know, it may only move that activity to another area of the city, but I do think that those projects being completed is going to go a long way in diminishing some of that activity. When there's not a watchful eye at night, when there's not people looking out of windows, it's just one more, you know, aspect of anonymity that's there.
Okay. And you probably can't tell me this, so I'm going to ask it anyway, but if you can't tell me, I understand. So in terms of, since the order does deal with COVID-19, have you seen a higher spike in that particular area? Or can you tell me?
We have provided a walk-up test site on Appleton and Maple, right nearby, because one of the reasons is we wanted people who are vulnerable, who are housing insecure, who are on the street, who are in that industry. We want there to be accessible, no red tape access to testing. I would not say that there is a significant increase there than elsewhere. It's not. I'm not seeing a spike in that neighborhood. Our cases are scattered throughout the city, and I mean, like I said, we're calling and working with a lot of these people, and we're not getting runs of people in the sex industry or people who are homeless. There are services. If you're homeless, doesn't matter what you do, but if you have a substance issue, if you're a prostitute, and you have COVID-19, there are state MEMA operates shelters that they will transport you to, and they will put you up until your diagnosis is cleared. And so it's not as if there's an abundance of COVID-19 positive displaced people just
walking
out and about. Yeah.
Okay. And Chief, one last question. Just have we seen, and the Elm and Appleton corner that we've had our conversations about, have we seen anything? I mean, I haven't heard too much lately. Has it been going down? We got a little better control there?
No, it's still hopping. We're still there. We're still patrolling it, making checks of the rear, the inside, the outside. It's pretty busy. It's busy until the cold weather comes. Things will slow down a little bit. But yeah, no, we're
still doing that. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. Councilor McGivern, anything? You're muted.
Sorry.
That's
I think it's good. For the record, I agree with Mike on the trash receptacles. We have them everywhere, but we don't have the budget to support that. What the chief and Sean does in this area, I support and understand. Even without COVID, it's a difficult task. Chief, every now and then get some of the Johns, and that sends the message, I think, that if there's no customers, there's no prostitutes. But other than that, what can you do?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say where order's been complied with, Councilor McGivern.
Second.
Okay, unless there's any other comments, Chief, Sean, Mike, you guys are all set? I mean, Sean, you're all set? Okay. All right, so thank you all and Mike, you're still here with us, but Chief and Sean, thank you very much. I know I kept you for a long night, longer than I thought. And again, I was hoping the mayor would be in on this, but I'm sorry he did not. So I do appreciate it. So the order has been moved, the order's been complied with. All in favor?
So moved.
Aye. Aye. Okay. Mike, we're going to get all to yours now. Okay, and I appreciate your patience as well. And I also want to thank you. I know John got that tree I talked to you about on Route 5 on Ingleside Street, just above St. Vincent. It's cleared now, so
good.
Nobody's got to walk on the road anymore. So, thank you. So the first, I'll go back to the regular order, Joe, and that would be item 6 on the agenda was ordered by
for discussion.
Hernandez. All in favor? Aye. Order that follow-up questions from constituent, I'm going to say Cocaine or Cosane Givner regarding a city council meeting on 4/21/2020 in which O'Connor Street was discussed and a traffic study is in order. And Lawler Street has speed bumps. Would this be an option for O'Connor Avenue in order to deter through traffic and speeding? Are there plans to continue a single lane traffic with bike lane, and parking on both sides of the street? So, Mike, we're taking this up. I don't know how familiar you are with the street.
So I know O'Connor. I mean, it's parallel to Clinton, in between Hamden and Dwight. It's a one-way street. Again, it's narrow and with cars parked on both sides of the street. We don't have anything to report on this agenda item at this time. We need to do more looking into it, more study, and to even talk with the resident. We're trying to get some information from Libby,
okay,
so that we can do a thorough job to try to figure out what the concern is.
Okay, so if it's all right, we would table this and maybe have this come up, and maybe not the next meeting, but maybe around 4 or 6 weeks.
That would be great.
Okay.
Take a motion to the table.
All right. A second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item on the agenda is introduced by Councilor Anderson Burgos. We'll take that item up, Joe.
Motion makes to take it off the table for discussion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Order that a traffic study be done on Sargent Street, observing traffic between St. Jerome and Sycamore. Residents have mentioned several accidents in this area, possibly due to the speed and obstructive views as vehicles travel around the bend. They have suggested a four-way stop may be helpful at either Magnolia or Sycamore. Mike, have you had a chance to take a look at this?
Okay, no, we haven't had a chance to dig into this one either.
Okay.
As you know, stop signs and four-way stops, there's certain warrant conditions that need to be met as far as traffic goes and speed. But with that, there's always engineering discretion. If that bend could warrant a stop, we could make the recommendation, but I would ask for more time.
Okay.
On this as well.
Okay. Now, have you heard of? I haven't heard of a lot of accidents. Though, have you? Have Councilor McGivern? Have you?
No, I mean, there's always been a speed issue, but I don't think it's, you know, I mean, I think a little bit of enforcement with a radar gun would go a long way, but that's just my own opinion.
Yeah. So we'll just table this, and Mike, but I'll probably look at it as probably the middle of November for taking all these up.
Yeah, and the next one as well.
Okay. All right. So we'll do this one first. Don't get me all messed up. So all in favor of tabling it?
Aye.
Okay. Table 2-0. The last item on the agenda is also from Anderson Burgos. Make a motion we take it up. Councilor McGivern, yes.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Order that a traffic study be done at the corner of West Franklin and St. Jerome. Residents are concerned about vehicles traveling down West Franklin at high speeds and the potential for collision with vehicles with an obstructive view driving off of St. Jerome because of the bend in the road. They are asking for either speed bumps or a four-way stop. And I if I can, Mike, before you, I have some personal experience with this area, and this is one of those areas that, and I've got it on, you know, I'm still looking at raised sidewalks, Mike, and talking about how we might be able to do some of those. But this would be one of those areas at that area of St. Jerome and up by the beginning across where the Rowan Park is, up on, I think is it Chapman Street?
Chapman, yeah, Chapman.
And I know Bob has indicated on his last meeting we had that, you know, trying to put them in a series where they might be within 500, I think it was 500 yards of each other. It might have been 500 feet, whatever. I think it was 500 yards. So.
Yeah, feet would be too close.
Huh?
Feet would be too close.
Okay, yeah, I'm thinking it's yards. But that if we did it, I mean, there would be 2 cases, and then after that, they're going to be going to the traffic light down at Beach Street. So, and then they got the traffic stop on Northampton Street. So I think I would like you to also look at that as a potential, as well as the speed bump or a four-way stop. But I think that, you know, again, I think my sister has a house that is a couple of houses down, and she actually had a truck into her cellar, and she's on the truck was going up, and it went into skidded around that corner and ended up in her cellar on the left side of the street going up. So I mean, it's definitely an area where there's some serious concerns, and I know there's a few residents that are really trying to push, and they talked about a speed bump, they talked about a four-way stop, and I've talked to them also about potentially for raised sidewalks, and also to put one up by the playground. So that all of those things, I think we'd like you to put in consideration.
Yeah, and I think West Franklin and Sargent, those 2 corridors,
yep.
have concerns. Like tonight, there was the other order with Sargent and Sycamore. Yep. I know previously there's been an order with West Franklin and Linden Street.
Yep.
So this area deserves a holistic look.
Yeah.
Not again, just intersection by intersection.
Yeah, this particular curve that they're talking though is because it almost looks like you're going to go off to the right, but you're actually almost everybody goes off to the left.
Right.
So it is a little confusing, but so again, we'll look at doing this so that our meeting in November, we would try to take all of these up and try to come up with some kind of reasonable plan to address the safety issues.
Before, real quick, Mr. Chairman, Mike, I understand, the makers of the orders who are not with us this evening, what their intent is. But there's two types of traffic studies, and certainly I understand the engineer and yourself and what you do, and when it comes to four-way stop signs and mitigating traffic. But this type of traffic study also needs the input of a traffic department and the police department, where we can measure speeds and do some, provide some accident statistics and things like that. And I hope we're not forgetting, this is not all a DPW problem. We really need the police department input on this one, on both of these.
Right, and as part of these traffic studies, DPW, we do have the radar measurements that we mount and leave out for a period of time to measure speed. But we also do ask the records division for any accidents that have happened in the last 3 to 5 years.
My apologies. I should have known you were on top of it.
So Mike, would that be all right if we just kind of plan this? So we're gonna probably right after the election, we'll take this up.
Sounds good.
Motion to table.
Okay, motion is table. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and I think that covers everything we were looking to do, unless I missed something, Councilor McGivern.
It took you longer than 90 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Well, there's times when we just can't get it done in your time frame. You're faster than I. Sometimes.
Nice.
So I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
And I'll make a motion or I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Scott.
And Scott, can you just, when you get it, thank you, Joe. When Scott, you and I had talked, if in the you can get back to me on what we had talked about. Scott.
Scott, I don't think Scott is live on here. I don't think he's listening. He usually counts on me to just let him know if something goes on.
Okay. Yeah.
Terry, do you think afternoon I can get those orders from you to give to Brenna?
Yeah. I'll after what time?
Like I was thinking, like anytime afternoon.
Okay. By tomorrow.
Up to just because she'll need them by Friday.
Yeah. Okay. It might be more like mid-afternoon. Is that okay?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, I'll see what I can do, and if I don't do it, you fire me. But
that sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much.
That. Come on.
All right, Joe. Thank you.
It's fun being co-host. You get a lot of power with this thing.
You don't need more power.
Well, I can meet you right now. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Have a good night, guys.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Night.
Night, guys. Take care. Thanks, Ryan.